So friends, today we will do some practical coverage of preference share. What are the news which are associated with preference share? We will see some of the screenshot of listed preference share. And finally, we will tell you what is the exact difference between preference share and equity share. So you can see I have given you a screenshot of G Enterprises Limited preference share. It is quoting at 2.01 in BSE, Bombay Stock Exchange. Fine, sir. So you can see that in the same manner as equity shares has a market value, preference shares is also having a market value. It is listed, it can be traded, it can be purchased and sold like equity shares. JSW is still 0.01% preference share. So 0.01% definitely is denoting dividend rate. And the price which is quoting is 1.22. Fine, sir. These are screenshots which I have taken just to let you know that preference shares market value is also available. All the preference shares are not listed. Those who are listed only we can get market value of that preference share. ILFS Financial Services fixes record date for dividend on preference share. So same news which we used to hear for equity, we are seeing it for preference share. So whenever you will read business newspaper articles, you will see business news channels and any news associated with preference share, then you will be confident enough that yes, whatever we are studying in our class is related to practical aspect. DBS will redeem. Again, redemption is there. We also have covered many redemption questions in our class. Coal India to convert redeemable preference share. So, convertible preference share question also we have covered in our class. Fine, sir. So, all those are practical aspects which we are now looking in this news. Fine, sir. Reliance Jio to raise rupees 15,000 crore via preference share. So, Reliance Jio is also raising money with the help of preference share. They have an option, they can issue equity, they can issue loan, they can issue bonds, they can issue debenture. In this example, in this case, in this article, in this newspaper screenshot, they are raising money through preference shares. Fine, sir. Kotak Mahindra Bank to declare payment of dividend on preference shares. Investors move away from preference shares to NCD, non-convertible debentures. So preference shares are not very popular in India because they have very less liquidity, because not all preference shares are listed. So definitely there is some problem. Whenever investors want their money back, they face some problem in selling preference shares. So let's now understand what is the major difference between equity shares and preference shares. Equity shares are the ordinary shares of the company representing the part ownership of the shareholder in the company. Whenever you buy equity share, it means you are becoming an owner of the company, you are the owner of the company. But preference shares are not considered to be owner of the company. Preference shares are the shares that carry preferential right on the matters of payment of dividend and repayment of capital. They have just a preferential right, name only indicating preference. What is the preference? The preference is whenever company will pay dividend, company will pay dividend first to preference shareholder and then to equity shareholder. And in the case of liquidation, whenever money is paid back, the first preference will be to pay back money to preference shareholder before any money is paid to equity shareholder. The dividend is paid after the payment of all the liabilities. In equity shares, when we are done with all our liabilities, then we can pay equity dividend. And preference dividend will always be paid first before equity dividend. In the event of binding up of the company, equity shares are repaid at the end. Just I told you these things. Equity shares will be repaid only after payment is done to preference shareholder. Rate of dividend is not fixed in case of equity shares, but it is fixed in case of preference share. Equity shares are not redeemed, but preference shares is redeemable as per the agreement. Voting rights. Equity shares carry voting rights. Normally, preference shares do not carry any voting right. However, under special circumstances, they can get a voting right. But in normal situation, they do not carry any voting right. Equity shares can never be converted. Equity shares can never be converted, but preference share can be converted into equity share. Equity shares have no right to get arrears of dividend of the previous year. Equity shares do not get their any dividend which is not paid in any year. They do not get any right of arrears of dividend. There cannot be any dividend outstanding in case of equity shares because they will not be paid for any past dividend. But preference shares, that is cumulative preference dividend, they can carry. If they are not paid in any year, then it will be carried forward to the next year. If company have sufficient profits, then first all the arrears will be paid, all the preference dividend will be paid. Preference shareholder generally get the arrears of dividend along with the present year dividend if not paid in the last previous year, except in case of non-cumulative preference share. Non-cumulative preference share will not get any arrears of dividend, but cumulative preference shares will get their arrears of dividend. Fine, sir. So these were major differences between equity and preference share. Fine. Again, we are repeating these points. Again, let's repeat this point. Number one, voting rights. Equity shareholders are eligible to vote. Number two, arrears of dividend. Equity shares are not eligible. Number three, dividend preference. Equity shareholder will get last preference. At the time of liquidation, equity shareholder will be paid last. Equity shareholder cannot be converted. Equity shareholder cannot be redeemed. Fine. So these were major differences between equity and preference. So I hope you have a clear-cut picture now for equity and preference. And these questions are asked in interview, and definitely you will be able to crack your interview in a very, very easy manner. And your aim of finance career starts from my class, start from this learning. The more you will learn in my class, the more you will earn. So happy learning and happy earning. Thank you so much.